Welcome to the Procurement Software Podcast, where we aim to educate and inspire you about how technology is changing and shaping our profession. The truth is, there's never been a more exciting time to be in procurement, but only if you're one of those organizations that's embracing the change and driving new developments. And this podcast is all about giving you the tools to help you get there. So buckle up and let's get right into this week's show. James here, and welcome to another episode of the Procurement Software Podcast. Have you ever wondered why big consultancies always partner with the legacy source-to-pay suites? I did, and then I took the time to try and figure it out and spoke to a few people and drew a few conclusions. So I'm going to try and break this down today. And then at the very end, I will also offer you some alternatives if you don't want a legacy source-to-pay suite and you don't want a big consultancy to go out and find the software for you. So why do they do this? Well, first of all, we've got to acknowledge that big consultancies have a very corporate mentality, and that will often translate into the fact that their digital procurement team usually don't know that much about the total market. Now, I don't want to sound unfair when I say this. There are some great individuals working for some of these consultancies that are extremely knowledgeable about the digital procurement market. So I don't want to tarnish everyone with the same brush. But when I say lack of knowledge of the total market, what I mean by that is they're only really focused on solutions that are targeting huge corporations as their ideal clients. So they're going to be pretty ignorant in most cases of the type of software that's out there that serves small and medium businesses or even like mid-market, mid-cap companies. So if these people that work for these large consultancies are moving in these same circles and are hobnobbing with the same CEOs or CPOs of Fortune 500, FTSE 100, DAX 40 companies, it's probably no surprise that they're not spending much time on getting to know who are the providers, the solution providers out there that are delivering real innovation. A lot of them are often influenced by research houses such as the Magic Quadrants that Gartner puts out or the Waves that Forrester publishes. And types of reports usually only take into consideration legacy established players because they have a certain number of tick boxes that a solution must subscribe to before they even get a look in. So, if you've got a piece of software that doesn't have a specific functionality, then it's not even going to get a look in on these reports. That's how rigid some of these reports are put together. And a researcher's got to do what a researcher does in terms of, wanting to set a baseline for the software that they're comparing. But if these large consultancies are only looking at this type of analyst reports and are not considering some of the up and coming solutions, it's little wonder that they're only talking to the legacy tech players. Another reason is that if a large consultancy is partnering up with a specific software, I don't know, let's say it could be anyone. It could be Coupa, it could be Jagger, it could be SAP Ariba. Name any of the big legacy players, Ivalua, Zycus, could be any of them, right? I can't say this as a blanket statement, but for the most part, they are going to be getting an affiliate or partner commission from that software company for each license or for each package or module that they sell. So there's obviously a massive conflict of interest there to make sure that the consultancy is pushing quite an expensive solution. Because if you're getting 20, 30% commission on $1 million, that's going to be a lot more than if you're getting 20, 30 commission on $50,000 in terms of what the software costs. So that's obviously going to be another factor. All these big consultancies have very expensive office towers in big tier 1 cities, and corporate real estate is expensive, as are salaries. But the big one for me, in terms of how do these big consultancies really earn their money in terms of digital procurement transformation projects is on the implementation. And let's not forget, big consultancies are in the business of selling people. That's what they do. They sell labor. And they have a very old school business model in the sense that the way that they price projects is typically based on how many heads do they need to put into the client and how many hours or how many days will they need to bill them for. And then you've obviously got junior resources that are they're like the foot soldiers. You have a lot of those. They don't really know that much about the products or what they're doing. They're often straight out of university, maybe only 23, 24 years old. And then you'll have typically a senior manager that's managing that project, that's managing that team of junior consultants. And then you'll have a principal or maybe even a partner that's overseeing it, perhaps as a subject matter expert or as the ultimate client liaison person that deals with anything commercially or operationally during that project that has to be escalated. And because you have so many people in there, and because those day rates are so high, because these big consultancies are just essentially selling off their brand and selling off the ability of them to sell their brand to big enterprise clients, the people that actually are doing the implementation, these junior consultants that are recent graduates, they're not highly experienced digital procurement transformation professionals. They're just following a playbook and doing what they're told and following the processes of the organization. So essentially, you're paying for the IP of that organization, of that big consultancy, to put together these very watertight processes of how to implement Coupa or how to configure SAP Ariba or how to get the most out of Jagger or Ivalua, name whichever legacy suite. I'm being agnostic here because they're essentially all the same. They require a lot of configuration. They take a long time to implement. Often it's years rather than months, depending on the complexity of the project. And, in fairness, in their defense, that is often down to the client not really knowing what they want or need because they don't have the expertise in-house to be able to give a very specific scope of work to the consultancy. Obviously, then the consultancy is going to rub their hands, aren't they? Because they can bill a lot of contingency in there because the client doesn't really know what they want. But the profit margin for being the implementation partner of these legacy suites is huge as a result. The more people that you deploy and then the additional people that you deploy to fix stuff when it goes wrong, and the longer that a project takes, the more profitable it is for these consultancies. So it's kind of in their interest to be as vague as possible in terms of what it is that you want or should be asking them for, because then if the project starts to go a little bit wrong, then they can just throw more resource at it and bill you even more consultancy hours. And the sad fact is that clunky and complicated software requires a lot of consulting resource because it needs a lot of technical configuration. It requires a long time to launch it. You're going to have their consultants with their boots on the ground in your operations during the hypercare phase because it's complex. You're going to need them in your organization to train people within your team to be super users. You're going to need them to help with internal comms because you probably don't have the in-house resources because procurement resources have been cut to the bone in most organizations. And then if you need any sort of software customization, what does that mean? Yep, that's another bill that you're going to get if you find 6 months, a year down the line that something doesn't really do what you want it to, and you're going to have to customize it further, or maybe even go out and buy best of breed software that can do the additional functionality that you thought you were getting with this legacy tech, but it doesn't give it to you. And then you'll need, hey presto, the consultancy again to come in and connect that best of breed tool with the legacy source to pay suite. So it's kind of an ongoing spiral. And, even on top of that, maybe you will even need some sort of BPO or managed service functionality from the consultancy then to keep running. Spend analytics or sourcing as a service is a valid business model of a lot of these consultancies. Consultancies are out there that do just do things like run events and configure events in SAP Ariba because it's so damn complicated to put anything together for the average user that maybe only needs to run a sourcing event 2 or 3 times a year. So the reason why these big consultancies always partner with legacy source to pay suites is some of it's lack of knowledge of the marketplace and just lack of innovation. And, they're very staid, they're very corporate. But a lot of it is just because it's so much more profitable for them to be a partner of some of these legacy tools than it is for them to be a partner of something that is a little bit more plug and play, because they're just not billing as many consultancy hours as a result of that. If you compare this to a one and done best of breed solution that, okay, in the case of source to pay, it's not going to be up and running in days, but it could certainly be up and running in a couple of months, versus a big complex suite that requires a lot of configuration and is confusing to use and requires a lot of training, a lot of onboarding. It's a no-brainer for the consultancy, isn't it? If their business is selling people and selling time and labor, the more labor you can sell, the more profit you're going to make. So, even if this is the best solution on the market for a client-specific challenge, if you find a best-of-breed solution that solves everything that a client wants to fix, if it's not a complex solution to implement that requires a lot of consultancy to do, it's not in the consultancy's interest to promote that. So if you're thinking that consultancies are trusted partners in terms of being able to advise you objectively on what are the best digital procurement tools out there, I think you need to wake up and smell the coffee. And that really concludes that part of it. But I just wanted to, before I sign off, just explain a little bit how what we do at procurementsoftware.site is different to that, because we do have some affiliate partners where we get a commission if we recommend them. But we only push those solutions if the client that comes to us doesn't have a budget to pay us for consultancy, because I fundamentally think it's a conflict of interest and ultimately unethical to take money from a solution provider and from the client who's looking to buy the software. So I will either do one or I'll do the other, but I will never do both, because that's a blatant conflict of interest. So if you want completely impartial advice on the procurement tech that's out there, then pay us that as a business and we will deliver that, and we will actively call out who we have referral agreements with, so as you can objectively assess that we're not being biased towards any one of them. But if you're paying me as a client, I'm not going to be taking any money from the solution provider side in addition to that, because that compromises me as a neutral individual in terms of what software I'm going to recommend you. There are a lot of good software solutions out there, and that's why I partner with some of them that I'm happy to recommend. But no software is a one-size-fits-all, and every potential client that comes to me is going to have nuances in the type of product that they're looking for and why they want it to solve a specific challenge. So, it would be quite short-sighted of me just to shill one piece of software in one area over and above another, because it's not going to be the right solution for everyone, despite it could be the most fantastic piece of software out there in terms of UI, UX, pricing, ease of implementation. But it may not have a specific feature that is an absolute must-have for the client in question. So anyway, that's my philosophy on this whole space, and an attempt to explain why big consultancies will always partner with these legacy platforms that are very expensive, very complex to implement, and ultimately are very profitable for them because it requires a lot of consultancy time to get them working properly. Thank you very much for listening. We'll catch you again same time next week. If you would like to reach out for consultation, just head to the show notes and click on the link and schedule an intro call with me, and I would be happy to discuss any aspect of digital procurement with you. I love nerding out on this stuff, so it's always a pleasure to hear about what challenges are out there and what specifics you're looking for to see if I can help you further. See you next week. Take care and bye for now.